Hey, great. Well, thank you everybody for joining today. Welcome to the Council of Graduate Schools and Consejo Mexicano de Estudios de Posgrado event, Global Perspectives, Transdisciplinary and Transnational Research in Latin America. Before we get started with today's presentations, I'd like to remind folks that today's presentations are being recorded, though the discussion following the presentations will not be. Since today's event is a meeting and not a webinar, please do be mindful about muting yourself when you're not speaking so that you're not captured on the recording. During the presentations, as well as after, please feel free to use the chat to share links, ask questions, and continue the discussion. There will be a Q&A period for the presenters after all three presentations, so please do hold your questions until the end. Just a quick meeting overview. Today's meeting is going to be 90 minutes, and it's going to begin with a welcome and overview of the 2024 Global Summit, which was held at the University of Guadalajara in Mexico. And then we're going to have a brief introduction of the 2025 Global Summit, which is going to be held in Quebec City, Canada. Then we're going to follow with three presentations, which will discuss transdisciplinary and transnational research in Latin America in various national contexts. That'll be followed by an audience Q&A for the panelists, and then we'll close with about half an hour of breakout groups and networking discussion. For those of us who are joining us, and primarily from Spanish-speaking backgrounds, there will be an opportunity to participate in the breakouts in Spanish. Please let me know if you would like to be put in a Spanish-speaking breakout group, and I will sort you into a Spanish breakout. With that, I'd like to pass the baton over to CGS President Suzanne Ortega to do her welcome. Suzanne, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Matt. And we're so pleased to see you, colleagues, and have you with us on this jointly co-hosted meeting conversation. We're so pleased both that we could be at the University of Guadalajara with COMEPO last fall, for a meeting that forms the heart of today's meeting. For those of you who don't know CGS, I thought I'd just give you a very brief overview of who we are. We are a higher education association with 450 US and Canadian member universities and 25 to 30 international affiliates. The vast majority of PhDs produced in the United States, earned in the United States, come from CGS member institutions. And you can see a little bit about our numbers and the range of our membership in this slide. Well, one of the things that has been such a great privilege for me each year is that for 16 years, CGS, in partnership with other organizations, higher education associations, and universities, have hosted an annual meeting which we call the Global Summit for Graduate Leaders. Each year, that summit is hosted in partnership with a university or an association on different continents and around the world, focused on pressing issues in graduate education. So we've been a lot of beautiful places and had spectacular conversations in places ranging from Singapore, Cairo, Melbourne, Manchester, Hong Kong, Sao Paulo, and elsewhere, on topics ranging anywhere from graduate student mental health and well-being to mentorship, ethical internationalization, and data science. You'll hear from Philippe Edwin about the 2025 summit shortly, but just know that each year we ask participants, someplace between 40 and 60, to write a short paper on the year's topic and ensure that every delegate has a voice in the meeting. So in 2024, as I said, we were so delighted to spend time in Guadalajara with our colleagues at the University of Guadalajara. And the topic of that conversation was transdisciplinary and transnational graduate research to solve global grand challenges. Well, that's a mouthful, but what it really means is that it's a combination of expertise from a variety of fields, from a variety of scholars transcending national boundaries that will be required to tackle all of the world's grand challenges, from poverty to climate change to pollution to war and violence to inequality to water. All of these will require the expertise of multiple disciplines and multiple nations. So you can see here the QR code. You have access. Please make use of it. You can see more about the papers and the convening. But at each convening, we end the meeting trying to distill a set of principles that we use then to inform our ongoing conversations on campus. This year's conversation, or the 2024 conversation, and I know the 2025 conversation likewise, led to rich discussion. And I'm not going to repeat all of the principles, the 11 principles that delegates agreed upon, but there was real recognition that transdisciplinarity isn't really an end state. It's not an outcome. It's a process. It requires continuing evolution, new forms of collaboration with disciplines. One of the principles was to prioritize sustainable solutions in keeping with the sustainable development goals, to really start thinking about the kinds of changes we would need to make to curricula in order to promote the kind of learning that allows people to work effectively in transdisciplinary teams. We spoke to the importance of involving diverse voices, and particularly those who often are excluded from major national conversations, including the voices of our colleagues and students from the Global South and indigenous communities. We talked about the importance of embracing multiple supervisor models simply as one mechanism for promoting more transdisciplinary research. I won't leave out, I'm just going to mention one final one because in some ways to me unless we can manage to address it, none of the others will follow. And that is the notion that we really need to establish tenure and promotion processes that reward and recognize the contributions made by transdisciplinary scholars. Well, I hope some or all of these principles will inform and guide today's conversation. But at this point, I really want to say again, welcome. Thank you for joining us. And I want to pass the microphone over to my colleague, Philippe Edwin Belanger from the Institut National. Oh, gosh, can I just say INRS, Philippe Edwin, our host for the 2025 summit. Philippe Edwin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you very much for organizing this webinar. So, dear colleagues, it is a distinguished honor for me to introduce the forthcoming 2025 Strategic Leaders Global Summit, which will be held, as you know, at the end of September at the Institut National de la Recherche Scientifique in Quebec City. This year's theme, Artificial Intelligence and Emerging Technology to Support Student Success, invites us to engage in a critical and timely reflection on the evolving landscape of graduate education. Artificial intelligence, alongside developments in machine learning, robotics, natural language processing, and augmented reality, is increasingly shaping the condition under which research, learning, and academic leadership are conducted. Much of the discourse surrounding these technologies has emphasized the risk they may pose. Concerns, of course, related to ethical use, data governance, academic integrity, and the shifting role of human expertise. However, the objective of this summit is to move beyond cautionary narratives and to consider how these same technologies might contribute constructively to the goals of graduate education. More specifically, we seek to examine how they may support student success, understood in this full complexity, academic, professional, and of course, personal. The summit will bring together senior academic leaders, as you know, a researcher, and some practitioners from a wide range of institutional and geopolitical contexts. The program is structured around 6 thematic, and maybe we can move to the next slide. 6 thematic, each addressing a key dimension of the intersection between artificial intelligence and graduate education. I'm not going to read those 6 themes, but you see it on the screen, and it's going to be very interesting. So the Strategic Leader Global Summit offers a distinctive format that privileges substantive, in-depth dialogue among a select group of senior academic leaders from around the world. Participants will reflect on how these innovations are reshaping academic work, pedagogical models, institutional priorities, and public expectation. In doing so, the summit seeks not only to explore current practices, but also to support a more strategic, anticipatory approach to educational leadership and rapidly evolving context. In closing, we are particularly pleased to host this important gathering in Quebec City, a place whose history and identity are deeply intertwined with dialogue, cultural exchange, and negotiation across differences. Founded at the confluence of the St. Lawrence River and an ancient indigenous trade route, Quebec City has long been a place of encounter. First for the First Nation peoples, then for the European settlers, and over time for a broad range of global influences. Today, the city remains shaped by linguistic duality, cultural diversity, and long-standing academic and intellectual tradition. Its history reflects a legacy of dialogue and negotiation, a place where perspectives have met and new understanding have emerged. In a world marked by a growing geopolitical tensions, war in Europe, and the rise of populist and far-right movement across many regions, it is more important than ever to sustain spaces for dialogue and exchange. Forums such as the summit allow friends and partners who share common goals and values to remain connected, to reflect together, and to respond thoughtfully to the challenges of our time. Quebec City thus offers not only a physical setting for our gathering, but also a symbolic one, a city whose past and present speak to the importance of constructive engagement. We hope this context will inspire meaningful conversation and help shape a shared forward-looking vision of graduate education in an era defined by artificial intelligence and rapid technological change. So we look forward to welcome you in Quebec City next September. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philippe Edwin, for that wonderful introduction, and we're looking forward to the 2025 summit. I'd now like to pass the baton over to Janet Rutledge, who's the Dean in Residence at the Council of Graduate Schools, to introduce today's panel. Janet, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very excited about this upcoming presentations that we have from our 3 colleagues. I will introduce them, and then also as they give their presentations, they will introduce themselves further. First, we will have Marcela Torres Hernandez, who's president of COMEPO. We also have Yarelis Lara Rodriguez, as president of the Red Colombiana de Postgrados, and Adenilso Simao, associate prorector of postgraduate studies at the University of Sao Paulo. I'll now turn it over to Marcela. Marcela, are you there? I saw her earlier. Matt, do you know if she's still
She's back. Here she is.
Okay. Thank you. Marcela.
Thank you very much, Janet. Muchas gracias. Bienvenidos todas y todas.
Thank you so much. Welcome. It's a pleasure for Comepo to be able to have this webinar in collaboration with the CGS, as well as with the University of Sao Paulo for the participation of the LISO, and also through the president of the Colombian Network of Postdegree, as Yareli Lara, that is with us. I'm going to speak a little bit of the Mexican context on the research, transdisciplinary and transnational research in our country. First of all and foremost, I would like to start with an identification of these main barriers that we could be able to identify that avoid or the most prolonged development of this type of research, that they have characteristics of including diverse disciplines, also with the characteristic of involving those populations or sectors that are living the challenge, the global challenge, with local repercussion, that they want to disappear or improve, and that it also has an international tone or transnational tone. So amongst the groups of these main barriers that have been identified are the administrative processes from the institutions, as well as the research incentives and academic, as well as the dynamic and institutional communication to the inside of the universities of that do research to be able to achieve this type of research. And lastly, the structural continuous participation of foreign external actors in the design and also solutions for the challenges or problems that are facing, in such a way that the research, they have a potential use of improving the situations of any population. Well, let's speak about a little bit on the barriers of the administrative barriers or the processes. On the one hand, we have legal and financial. Mainly, we face this in the universities, in the public universities or the public research centers. For on the one hand, maybe there's no clear route on the legal processes and financial and administrative. That is to say, generally, for the signing of an agreement or the legal representative, what it means, that is the dean of said university, and in many times it could be slow with a great amount of elements, legal elements that they have to check before the signature. And as I said, maybe they haven't built a clear path on, for example, if they have an external financing, mainly how to receive this type of financing and all the processes that they have to do with the application or the use of said resources, as well as where they come from. So also the professors, that they might have a consolidated group of research that is transdisciplinary, that they have ramifications for a particular problem or a challenge or a global challenge with local implications. So it becomes very complex, very complicated to be able to identify who to talk with and where to generate these processes, these administrative processes. On the other hand, we also have the challenges, institutional challenges, or the internal networks of communication and collaboration to achieve research with an internationalization focus. And sometimes, as they said, this example, it could be an internal group of professors and multi or interdisciplinary, that they have everything inclusively if they have financing, but if they don't have their own networks, international networks, they don't find, let's say, a partner or external partner with whom they can develop this research. So therefore, it could generate some strategy or some communication, a very well coordinated between the internationalization office of the university with the office of research and post-degree of the same university, in such a way that there could be internationalization strategies based on research or in the search for
partners o socios
partners
internacionales.
or international partners for a research that is ongoing and then that is consolidated. On the other hand, this long-term building of international consortiums, it's not so easy to have internal university model, for example, internalization financing to achieve it, and as well as the capacity to application. First, that the researchers could know of all the available calls for research, international research, and the other way, on the other hand, for the application of these courses. So there's a whole building of capacities that so many times it's given as an individual level. That is to say, the researchers in general, or in many occasions, that they give results, or they have fructiferous with this characteristic that they have international cooperation and that they have transdisciplinary nature, is that the professors, they have international networks and they open the path for these international processes and they generate experience. However, so many times this experience is not institutionalized in such a way that it doesn't permeate all the institutional processes to be able to be expanded and to generate support to all these research groups that they have these characteristics, or they are in search for a international partner to generate multi or transdisciplinary. And on the one hand, we have the legal and financial barriers and administrative, and on the other hand, the dynamics from the organizations in the between the different offices to be able to communicate, to consolidate, or to achieve these type of researches. On the other hand, also, we have the challenge that the incentives, the academic incentives for research, they're not always aligned, or so far, in many universities in Mexico, they're not 100% aligned. That is to say, on the one hand, there's not enough financing to develop this type of research. That so many times when the calls are open to finance this type of with this type of research with these characteristics, the researchers, they can organize by themselves. There's a capacity of individual will, so they search for other colleagues and they can form this type of groups, collaboration groups that they didn't exist before, that they're interdisciplinary. To have, let's say, let's say as such, as it is, a resource for the use of research on these characteristics. On the other hand, all these evaluations for the institutional degrees, or to advance, or the researcher or professor to advance, whether inside or universities or research centers, some are advancing, but it's not still very well planted to consider to be involved to develop or any research with international partners or with multidisciplinary, so they can go up in their category as researchers and professors. So we need incentives for the evaluation for their institutional career, so they can achieve or to get this type of researches, that they will be more attractive and they will be recognized to the inside of the universities and their research. And also, well, other kind of alignment is that their knowledge would be able to have institutional support, so they could distribute this generation of science and technology and knowledge for those actors that might be able to apply it effectively. So this linkage process, many researchers, they have it, but if there's models and strategies, they could be more fertile to generate this type of research. And also, let's speak a little bit more about the methodologies or strategies for the linking of between universities. That it could be permanently. Also, we have today models that they are not still developed. They're not so generalized. We have models that are centered in the linkage between the external actors where the community that they're living in, problem in particular, they could participate on the design and even of the proposals for solutions. So this is another barrier, the generation of these models, that they have a link, an effective linkage that is permanent and alive with and that they live with other actors that could be linked with the interdisciplinary activities. And I will present some examples right now of good practices of Mexican institutions that have generated these kind of actions, whether from their subdirectors or actions that they generate, let's say, that they be generating through development of a research, and they would add other researchers to achieve um, research with a transdisciplinary profile. I'm going to present the example of La Salle, Bajío, that is a measure that goes from top to bottom. That is to say, it's a model of research that the authorities of this university implemented so that the research have a social impact. Briefly saying, the characteristics that this model has is firstly that it was all generated a restructuring on, first of all, the assignation of researchers of full-time to different faculties. After, they established as well lines of institutional research with 6 specific programs, and all the research that are done in the or developed in the university must be aligned with any of these institutional points. And then after, they generated structures for the solution of problems in such a way that professors or full-time professors could center in the identification of factors and possible solutions to relevant problems or issues. After that, when the problem is the center of the research, then that's where we can have a dialogue with different disciplines that if it's not based on research on a problem in particular or a possible solution, it's more difficult to communicate with each other if we start from the focus of the discipline. And this university started to generate research where they were centered in the problem that they will add to the solution. Another example of good practices of a Mexican institution is the Instituto Posicino. This is on the center of Mexico of scientific and technological research. They generated a project of air quality in closed spaces, considering that the area that is around San Luis Potosí, since they have a region that it's an industrial region, they have a high industrial production, they generate an environmental pollution like polycyclics, hydrocarbons, and volatile organic compounds and metals and metalloids, and that this could be harmful for the health. As far as the quality of the air, of the outside quality, they have mechanisms where it could be there's an alarm or they can communicate the air quality, but they identify through their researchers that there was not a protocol to be able to establish or measure on the quality of air to the inside of the closed structures or indoor. So what the IPCs did was to generate technology, mobile technology, where students of public schools, they had this mobile device through which they were generating information and on real time, so in such a way that they could recognize and have or to know the path of the contaminants or the pollutants that this person lives through or it's living with in spaces, inside spaces. So with all this information that we gathered, they generated workshops with schools to be able to create protocols once they have identified where they have a high level of contamination that is not healthy to remain in this closed space. So they generated a solution based on the citizenship. That is an excellent option that they could use a methodology to be able to have a linkage or this transdiscipline with the sectors that are living inside the problem personally or firsthand. Another example of IPCT is that they generated a program with all the intention to be transdisciplinary so that students, post-degree students, again, they chose a problem or a relevant issue on the city, and they selected the presence of Isiatina in water of the San Jose Dam. It is a problem that has been presently for many years, and we cannot solve it. So they worked with 7 months with students of different post degrees to be able to understand, first of all, what are the causes on why is this present in the water, and also to advance in participation methodology that will help to identify these causes and to be able to generate possible solutions. And well, in this methodology, uh, members of the academy were participants, also in the government and the social sector. So this is another example of how to potentiate the forming of students of post-degree with a transdisciplinary perspective and to face global challenges. And now I'm going to mention, well, I'm going to allow myself to give you another example of the Colima University, Colima State. And it's very interesting because this example wasn't from top to bottom, but it was example of from the roots up. So through an activity of social retribution of medical students that they went to defend an elderly asylum to participate in the well-being of these elders. So they started to see improvement in the state of these people. They generated other groups of research. Firstly, to understand a social cause, but they also turned into group research groups that is interdisciplinary. So we have students of nutrition to be able to give follow-up to their nutrition and that to see that their health improves, and also with other areas that could be benefited to the population of this asylum. So it was a social retribution that it started with a group of students. It got broader to have a whole intervention that it was interdisciplinary to search the improvement of the state of health of the elders that live in this asylum. And let me tell you another example of that what I want to get at with these examples, and that these are there's different policies. They go from the top to bottom and from the roots to going up, and depending on the relevance and interest, the researchers they start to identify coincidences in such a way that they generate groups along the way naturally. So organically. So one of these groups that are formed naturally is the example of the University of Colima, and the other one from the University of Guadalajara, where one researchers on public health, they started to work with a community that they have many years living in on the outside or on the margins of the Chapala lake, and they have a big relationship with the water. They take a bath there and they eat there. However, in the last 20 years, the contamination or the pollution of the water, mainly of pesticides, is really, really high, very evident. And if they're permanent contact with the water or the air as well, and also with the fish that they get their nutrition, they started to
un
see
problema de salud
health
pública muy
issues,
fuerte, de
very strong
problemas
health issues
renales para
of
adultos como para
internal
niños, y
problems for
empezó
adults
a
and kids
generar,
and children, and they started to
aumentar la
generate
mortandad
to augment
por
the
los
mortality
problemas renales.
because of the
Este
renal
investigador
issues.
empezó a
So this
identificar que la
researcher,
causa de los
he started
problemas
to
renales
identify that the cause of these
trabajó
issues
principalmente con,
that he worked
bueno,
mainly,
su población objetivo
well,
fueron los
his
niños,
objective
y
population were children, and
existió una correlación,
there
¿no?
was a
Evidente
correlation,
entre
an
los
evident correlation
contaminantes
between the
de pesticidas
pollutants
presentes en
of
el agua
pesticides
y los problemas
and
renales con los
the
niños.
renal problems with
Empezaron también a
children,
incluirse en este caso, curiosamente, también investigadores desde el área de nutrición,
and
de tal
also for
manera
the
que generaron una intervención
nutritional,
donde
that
los
they
niños cambiando su
generated an
alimentación
intervention
a una
where the
alimentación
children, when they
100% orgánica,
changed their food to
mejoraron sus
100%
niveles, es
organic
más, se aliviaron, ya no tenían
food,
problemas renales. Y
they
ahora,
improved
en los últimos
immediately.
2 años, se
So
está
in the last
interviniendo
2 years,
también otro grupo de
they're
neurociencias
intervening a
por las
group of
afectaciones
neuroscience because of the affectations,
neurológicas que pueden tener los niños al
neurological
estar en
affectations
contacto
that children might have
directo con este tipo
for
de
being in
contaminantes.
direct contact with
Entonces,
these
bueno,
pollutants. So, well,
son 2 ejemplos.
these are two
Bueno,
examples,
compartí 3 ejemplos
and
que vienen de arriba hacia
I
abajo de
shared
políticas institucionales
3
y otros
examples,
2 ejemplos donde se va
and
formando
other
estos grupos de
examples that
investigación
the
transdisciplinar de manera natural.
transdisciplinary groups
Y
are formed
cuando el
organically.
problema
And when
es
the
importante,
issue is important,
también se cuenta con la
we also
colaboración, por
have
ejemplo,
the
en este caso de la
collaboration,
Universidad de
let's say,
Guadalajara,
for
de las
example, with the
escuelas, del
University of
mismo gobierno,
Guadalajara, with the
para
schools and the
apoyar las
government to
investigaciones.
support the research.
Ahora, ¿cuáles son los
Now,
beneficios de que
what are
los
the
estudiantes
benefits that the
participen
students
en este
participate
tipo de
in this type of
investigaciones?
research?
Primero es que
Firstly,
cuando existe un
is
socio
that when there
internacional,
is an
su
international
perfil
partner,
internacional empieza
their
a crecer,
international profile starts to
empieza
grow.
a conocer cómo
They
son
start to
las
be recognized,
colaboraciones, cómo
or
es la
they start to know
comunicación
how
entre
is the
grupos de
collaboration, the
diferentes
communication
países,
within
y
groups
por
of
otro
between
lado
groups of different
empiezan
countries. On the other hand,
a
we start
internalizar
to
que la investigación
internalize
se basa
that
en
the
la cooperación. Una investigación
research
basada
is
en la
based on
cooperación
the cooperation
también
and
empiezan a
collaboration, and
generar
also they start to
valor
generate
local a través de esta
local value
investigación
through this
cuando las
research
investigaciones
when the
tienen
research have
una aplicación directa,
an,
una intervención
direct
directa con
application
comunidades, y
with
también eso
communities, and
motiva
also this
principalmente a los
motivates
jóvenes, a la
mainly
nueva
to the young
generación
people,
Z,
new
que su
generations, the
trabajo
new
tiene impacto.
Z
Entonces
generation, that their
genera
work
un
has an
valor
impact. So
local a
they
través
generate a
de
local
esas
value through
investigaciones
these
y también una
researches,
motivación y un
and
compromiso
also an
por la ciencia
commitment and
cuando
motivation
ven que lo que
with
están
science when
investigando
they
puede
see that
mejorar la vida de
what they're
alguien más
researching, they
o
can
de
improve
algún
life of
o
someone
de la
else, or
naturaleza, ¿no?
from nature.
Por otro lado, también
On the other hand,
al incluir a los estudiantes en este tipo de
also it
investigaciones, se
includes,
genera
when you
un
include
cambio
these
cultural
students on this research, we have
donde su
cultural
incentivo ya no va a
exchange
ser
where their
responder
incentive is not going to be
a
to
una
respond only
ciencia que
to
no
a
sea
science
colaborativa
that
o que no
is not
tenga conexiones con otras disciplinas. Lo van a
connected with
ser
other
algo natural.
disciplines.
Cuando su formación
It's going
incluye
to be
estos
something natural
proyectos,
when
ya no
their
encuentran otra forma de
um,
hacer ciencia, de hacer
career
tecnología o investigación, y
involves these
también
projects,
ya no
they
van a estar
start
guiados por
doing
esta
getting
incentivos
more
de
involved with
generación de
other
puntos, donde
colleagues.
se premia
So
la
they
producción
have these
individual
different
y donde se premia
points
la
where
publicación
they
en
step away
revistas o
from
medios
individual
que
prizes,
no promueven la ciencia abierta. Y por
and
otro
they
lado, pues,
get more
la
involved with
mayor parte de los
publications that
estudiantes de
promote
posgrado que
science.
participan
And
en estas
also the
investigaciones
postdegree
generan
students that
sus
they
tesis de
participate in this
grado
research, they
a
generate
partir
their
de colaborar
thesis
con
through
los
collaborating
grupos
with
de investigación.
research groups.
Ahora, un poco en
And now,
México, ¿qué
a
es lo
little
que
bit in
viene?
Mexico, what is
Algunas
to come?
formas de cómo romper
Ways
estas
to break the
barreras que están
barriers as
presentes.
well that are
Es
present
primero, bueno,
is
que la evaluación
primarily is
institucional
that the
para las
institution
carreras
evaluation for careers on state or federal
de los
funding
profesores
and
y
entities
también que las
of the professors,
convocatorias
and also
vengan
that the
financiadas
calls
por los estados
that they are
o
financed by the
federales
states or federal
puedan
financing,
considerar
they
y
could be
puedan
considered and they
premiar
could
este tipo de
award
investigaciones,
this
¿no?
type of
También, por
researches.
ejemplo, el SNI que tenga un valor
Also,
más alto,
that they
porque
have
sí
a higher
implica un
value
esfuerzo
because it
adicional,
implies an
colaborar con
additional
grupos de
effort to
diferentes
collaborate with
disciplinas
groups of
y
these
hacerlo de
different
manera
disciplines, and to make it
y bueno, además
on
transdisciplina
better
incluye
also with the
la
transdiscipline, where they
incorporación de
include
actores externos,
the
entonces que se pueda
incorporation of
dar un valor y premiar
external
a estos
authors, so they
esfuerzos,
can
tanto para sus
value
carreras,
these
que son
efforts
instituciones,
for the careers
como
and
para
institutions, and as well for the
el financiamiento que viene del
financing
Estado
that
a
comes
nivel
from the
estatal o
state,
federal.
whether
También
it's state or federal level.
es
And
importante,
also,
creo que es
it
un
is
paso que se está
important,
dando a nivel
it's
federal
a
a
very
través de la
important step
CCT,
given in
es
a
que este
federal
año se
level,
publicaron
is that
dos
this year they
convocatorias
published two
que tienen
calls
una
that they
perspectiva
have
internacional.
an
La primera es
international
eventos académicos
perspective. The first one It's about international academics and linkage with international academies that in a federal level, these are promoting this international collaboration. On the other hand, as far as the models to work centered in the problems and not in the working.
Por otro lado, institucionalmente también lo que
On
se
the other
puede
hand,
hacer son
institutionally,
este tipo de investigaciones, como publicar un libro en la Universidad de Guadalajara, se hizo una
to
investigación
publish a book in the University of Guadalajara, they did a research
que tuvieran una
for investigation that they have
transdisciplinar y se genera un
multi-characteristics,
libro para
and
poderlas
they generate a book so we
Por otro
can
lado,
view it. On the other
los
hand,
criterios de las propias financiamientos internos prioricen
and
estas
they prioritize
características,
these
como lo ha hecho
characteristics,
la Universidad La
and
Salle
as
Bajío,
the University of La
y
Salle Bajío has
también
done,
poder
and also to
fortalecer
be able
y
to
consolidar los
strengthen
grupos
and
que se han
consolidate
creado
the
de manera
groups that they
espontánea,
are
¿no? Que no ha
created
habido una
spontaneously,
intervención
that they
institucional
don't have an
para crearlos.
institutional intervention to create
Esto
them.
es todo.
And
Muchísimas
also, this
gracias.
is
Y
it for me.
bueno,
Thank you
espero
so
con
much,
mucho
and
gusto
I hope
el diálogo
and
que
I
se va a
wait
presentar.
for the next presentation.
Thank you, Marcela, very much for that overview and for those excellent examples. Our next speaker is Yarelis Lara Rodriguez from Colombia. And I'd like to remind our speakers to try to keep it short because we do want to get some time for the discussion. And take it away, Yarelis.
Gracias. Bueno, yo les voy a hablar un poco acerca
I'm going to
de la
speak a little bit
qué hacemos en la Red
on
Colombiana de Posgrados y
what
más
we
o menos
do
pues
in the
todo
Colombian
el tema
network,
de
and
en
also a little
Colombia
bit on
cómo
the
está
topic
esa
of in Colombia,
integración
how is this
de la
integration of
preparación de la
the
investigación
preparation of the
transdisciplinaria en la formación de los
interdisciplinary
estudiantes
preparation
de
in the forming of
posgrados.
the students, of post-degree
Eh,
students.
la
So
Red Colombiana de
the
Posgrados se
network of
constituyó en el
post-degree
año
in Colombia,
2008
it
como un
was
espacio académico
constituted in
abierto, moderno
2008
y
as an
plural
open
y de integración
collaboration
universitaria que
academic
busca la
space and
reflexión de los
university
diferentes
integration that they
niveles y
search
académicos
for
de
the
las instituciones de
integration
educación
of
superior,
everybody
precisamente
in the
sobre
higher
temas,
education,
problemas y necesidades que
mainly
afectan
in
a la
the
educación
basic
posgrado
needs
en
that affect
Colombia.
the education in Colombia.
Rápidamente, esta es nuestra misión y visión, pues
Quickly, there's a
básicamente
vision and mission.
somos una organización nacional
Basically,
que contribuye a la consolidación de la oferta
is
académica
for the
posgradual en
consolidation of
cursos
the
más viejos,
academic offer of
propiciando
different
espacios
members
académicos
to
abiertos
give
y
spaces, open
colaborativos que
spaces,
fomenten la
so they
cultura de
can
investigación y
collaborate
el desarrollo
to
tecnológico y de
foster the culture
innovación.
of investigation and research.
Esta es
And this is our,
como la parte
let's say,
estructural
the
de lo que
structure
es la red.
of what is the
Cuenta con una
network.
asamblea
We
general de
have like a
71
general assembly
miembros.
of
Actualmente
different
acabamos de
members,
recibir
71 of
una
them.
nueva, es
We,
decir,
we
hoy tenemos
72 of them. We
73,
have
un comité
73 now.
ejecutivo que son 7
We have an
instituciones a nivel
executive committee.
nacional
These are
y
70
5
institutions
nodos
at the national
regionales
level
divididos por
and
toda
5
Colombia
nodes divided
temas
throughout
de
Colombia.
región Antioquia,
Topics
centro,
of
eje
Antioquia
cafetero,
Center,
suroccidente
Coffee
y pues la
region,
región Caribe.
Southwest, and the Caribbean
Muy
region.
rápidamente paso esto.
Quickly,
Y esto es el
I go
plan de
through this, and
trabajo que
this is the
nosotros
action
tenemos
plan
en el
of the
2025,
Executive Committee
precisamente
2025,
hablando del tema de
mainly
investigación,
speaking
el
about research,
fortalecimiento de la oferta y de la
strengthening of
incidencia
the
de
offer
las IES y un
and
sistema de monitoreo de
the
posgrados,
system of
que en este proyecto
post-degree
lo que
monitoring,
buscamos es
that in this project,
consolidar un
what we
sistema
search is to
confiable,
consolidate a
automatizado, que
reliable
permita a la red
program that
recopilar, analizar y
allows the
visualizar
network to
datos e
visualize data
información
of and
realmente para
information
trabajar
that really to
conjuntamente
work
proyectos
together,
articulados en
projects
temas
that are
temáticos.
articulated for more research.
Ahora vámonos a lo que nos
Now let's go to
compete precisamente en
the
el tema
main
de la
topic
investigación. La
in
investigación
research.
universitaria en Colombia
University
no aborda las
research in
necesidades del
Colombia,
sector productivo
they
y
don't
hay
have
una
they don't
falta de
tackle
colaboración. Este sería como los
producing
retos que
sector,
nosotros tenemos a
and
nivel
this
posgradual
is
en
one of the
Colombia.
challenges that we
No
have in
aborda las
Colombia,
necesidades del sector
that they
productivo y hay una
tackle
falta de
interproductive
colaboración productiva entre
topics and a
universidades
lack
y
of
empresas. Es decir,
cooperation
nos
between
hace falta
universities and
realmente
companies.
consolidar
We need to
esa
consolidate
mirada
this and
universidad-empresa-estado,
strengthen this
¿cierto? Para
collaboration
realmente
between
hacer
companies
proyectos de
or private
impacto
companies and
que
state to
trasciendan a
make
nivel
projects of
investigativo.
impact that
Las
would
preguntas
transcend
planteadas sobre el
the
propósito de la
research. The
formación doctoral y
question
postdoctoral y sobre el impacto real de la
and the
investigación
real impact on
ofrecen una
research, they
oportunidad
offer an
para
opportunity to
reflexionar y
reflect
reorientar las
and
políticas y
reorient the
estrategias en la
policies and
educación
strategies
posgradual en
in
Colombia.
the education
Existe una
in
falta de
Colombia. There
coordinación y
is a lack of
articulación entre
coordination
las
and articulation
distintas
between these
redes de
different
formación
networks
posgradual
of
y observatorios en
postgraduates and
Colombia,
observations in
redes y
Colombia, or there's
observatorio
multiple
científico
networks
ubicado
and
en
on,
perspectiva, lo que impide
observation
la
centers.
colaboración y uso
This
eficiente de los
doesn't
datos y la
allow the
información que cada
collaboration
uno
of
genera. En
insufficient
estos
data and
momentos nosotros
information.
tenemos
And right
redes que
now,
estamos aislados,
we have
cada uno
networks, but
está de
they're
manera
isolated. Everybody is pretty much doing
solitaria,
their own thing,
trabajando,
in
pero yo
solitary
creo que si
working.
realmente nos
But I believe
unimos
that
podríamos hacer
if we
proyectos de
get together, we could
impacto,
do
como los mencionaba
projects of impact like
Marcela,
the one that
proyectos que
Marcela was
realmente
mentioning, a
reales,
project that really
¿cierto?
would
Que la
enhance
misma comunidad
the
necesita y
livelihood and the
requiere,
community
y que requiere
requires
realmente la
and
participación de
needs,
todos
and
los
they will require the
actores.
participation of all the
La
actors.
transición hacia la
The
ciencia
transition
abierta se
for
presenta como
to
una oportunidad para
open science
democratizar
is an
el acceso
opportunity
a las
to
bases de datos científicas
democratize
y al
the
conocimiento de
access
punta,
and to the knowledge of
facilitando que realmente las personas
that to
puedan
facilitate
participar en
that people will be able to
investigaciones y
participate in the
beneficiarse de
research
sus
and to have a
resultados.
benefit in the results.
Actualmente
Currently,
hay un
there
documento que
was
me
a
pareció
document that I
supremamente
thought was
importante sobre
really
el tema de las
important
tendencias de
on
los
the topic of the
posgrados,
tendency of the
realizado
post
por
degrees
Víctor Cruz,
developed by Victor
¿cierto?
Cruz,
El anterior
um,
rector de la
the
UIP,
last director of the
donde él
WIPE,
decía que
where he
plantea que
was saying
estamos en
that
medio de un cambio
we're
estructural
in
en la
between
forma en que
of
se
a
produce el
structural
conocimiento.
change in the way you
Pasamos de un
produce
modelo
knowledge,
rígido,
going from a
disciplinar,
rigid
enfocado en problemas
disciplinary
simples y en
system
la
focused on
transferencia
simple
lineal del
problems
saber
and
a
the
uno más
transference,
abierto,
linear transference of knowledge to one that
transdisciplinario
is
y
more
enfocado
open,
en problemas
transdisciplinary, and
complejos,
focused on complex problems,
macroproyectos y en la
macro projects,
innovación
and
como fin
innovation
último de la
as
investigación.
a
Y esto
objective of the
propone una
research. And
nueva
this
metodología o pedagogía
allows
del
a
posgrado que
more,
impulse
a
el
better
trabajo
methodology that
interdisciplinario,
pushes
fomente el
interdisciplinary
diálogo
work, foster
intercultural y
intercultural
entrene a los
dialogue, and
estudiantes como docentes en
between students
habilidades de
and teachers
creatividad,
in
colaboración y
abilities of
pensamiento
creativity, collaboration,
epistemológico.
and thought,
Pero también reconoce que
epistemological thought.
existen
But
barreras
he also
estructurales
recognizes
y
that there is
culturales,
structural and
como
cultural
currículos
barriers
diseñados para el
as a
trabajo
vehicle
en
designed for
solitario,
the work in solitary.
profesores formados para pensar
Professors
de
formed
forma
to think
estrictamente analítica,
strictly analytical,
dificultad para articular
difficulties to
innovación con
articulate
evaluación
innovation with
académica
academic
y la necesidad
evaluation,
urgente de
and the
revisar
urgent need
la
to
tutoría
rethink
y el
the
acompañamiento
tutorship and
doctoral.
accompany
Y es por
for
ello
the
cuando
PhDs.
decimos
And this is when we
cómo se
say
integra esa preparación
how
para la
we
investigación
integrate this
transdisciplinaria en
for
la
the
formación de los estudiantes
transdisciplinary
de
in the
posgrados.
forming of
Pues
post-degree
hay un
students.
texto
Well, there's a
relacionado de
text
Manatunga donde dice,
related
propone
of
una
Maratunga that they
pedagogía para la
propose
formación doctoral
uh, to
interdisciplinaria
form
en cuatro dimensiones:
interdisciplinary
espacios para el
PhDs in four
diálogo,
divisions: spaces for
experiencias
dialogue,
interculturales,
intercultural
pensamiento
experiences,
creativo y
creative thought,
comprensión
and
epistemológica. Y
epistemology
esto
comprehension.
realmente
And this in
claramente que
reality
Colombia y la
is the
región deben apostar
between
por
Colombia
rediseñar la
and
experiencia
all the regions
doctoral,
to
no
redesign
con
the
currículos
PhD
estrictos y
experiences, not
disciplinares,
with
sino
strict curricula, but
transdisciplinarios, que prepare a
transdisciplinary
los estudiantes no solo
curricula
para
that they
saber
prepare
más,
students not
sino
only
para
to know
pensar
more, but
distinto
also
y
to
dialogar
think
mejor
different
y
and
construir en
to
colectivo.
go deeper, better, and to
Y es
build
por esto,
collectively.
¿cierto?,
And
que
this is
en
and
cuanto al tema de
this is the
barreras
reason
de que
that as far as the
enfrentamos
barriers
los
that we
estudiantes, una
face,
de las
the students,
principales
one of the main
barreras es
barriers
cómo lograr
is
esto en la
how to
práctica.
achieve this in
Personas
practice.
acostumbradas a
People that
trabajar
are
como
used
llaneros solitarios,
working
porque a eso
lonely,
nos
like a
acostumbramos
lone
mucho los
ranger, that we're
investigadores.
very used to do
Queremos
that, the
investigar solo
researchers.
lo que nosotros
We
pensamos
want to
que es
research
lo
by
que,
ourselves,
lo que
and
se
we think that
investiga, que
this
es
is
lo que
what
el
we
mundo o lo
do.
que
That's
la
how
población o la comunidad
the way
requiere.
it's done, but
Y
it's not
debemos
necessarily what
aprender
the
a
world
eso,
requires. And we need
cooperar.
to learn
Ni
that,
los
learn to
estudiantes
cooperate.
están
Nor the
preparados para
students
pensar
are prepared
creativamente,
to
ni
think
mucho menos los
creatively,
profesores.
nonetheless
Y
the
aquí
professors.
realmente hay una
And in
validación
reality, this is
contundente. El sistema
um,
actual no
very
entrena ni
important thing.
incentiva
The
la
current
cooperación,
system
la
doesn't
creatividad y el
incentivize
pensamiento
the
divergente.
collaboration
Y
of
como red,
to,
por
and they
ello
don't
queremos
incentivize
mostrar cómo
divergent thought.
estamos
And that's
trabajando
why
para
we need to
cambiar esta
show how we're
mentalidad con
working to change
formación
this
docente,
mentality
cambios
in the
curriculares y proyectos
forming of the students
compartidos. En este
with a
último
with the shared
congreso que
projects.
nosotros trabajamos
This
como
last
Red
one
Colombiana de
that we're
Posgrados,
working
fue
in the
un
post
panel
degree,
interesante con
there
rectores
was
donde
very
decía
important
cuáles
panel
son esas
as what we're
tendencias
saying.
o
What
cuáles
are
son
the
los retos de
tendencies
los
or what are the
posgrados
challenges
ahora
of
con
the
todo el tema de la
population
inteligencia
today with
artificial
the
y ahora con todas las
AI
dinámicas de investigación
and
diferentes.
with the
Y
dynamics
ahí decía que
change is different.
realmente nosotros
And
tenemos que
he said that
prepararnos
in reality,
a
we need
este
to prepare
mundo de
ourselves
la
to this world
investigación
of the
transdisciplinar con
transdisciplinary
enfoques
investigation with
transdisciplinarios, viendo
transdisciplinary
miradas
focus
diferentes
to
con
see
posturas
different looks,
diferentes
different
en
postures,
áreas
different
diferentes.
positions in different areas.
Entonces, realmente
So
yo creo
in
que
reality,
este
I think
encuentro
this encounter
realmente
reality
realza o
enhances
enfatiza lo que
or
nosotros queremos
emphasizes
apuntar también
that
como
we want to
retos y a nivel de
point
Colombia,
out at
de
a
poder
Colombian
cerrar
level
proyectos
to
de
be able to
investigación
have
conjuntos y
research projects that are together and articulated with a divergent thought and in areas that in reality, quote unquote, they can have an impact to a particular project. Now, we see as well that even though there are advances in the internalization of curricula, the student mobility, there are still barriers, significant barriers like lack of resources and they're resistant to change that they limit the impact of these initiatives. There's a consensus on the importance of the internalization of the population, of the programs of the post-degree as a route to improve. But this includes the adaptation of curricula to be aligned with global challenges like the ODS or the fostering of flexible models for students and professors. And this is why we'll be searching to push strategic alliances, foster exchanges, and promote double double post degrees and international agreements. And then this competition in Colombia, there is very few programs at post-degree level. They're credited internationally, and this is when is we have this question: what's the role that the international collaboration plays in the forming of students? Where we can say that even though it's not mentioned directly, with the intercultural experiences, it could be used this to augment international collaboration for distinct different scientific cultures for on a live and transdisciplinary lab. That's where we put into test the mental flexibility, and we put into practice innovation ideas. What Marcela said also in the different projects that she put as an example of the different universities, these are live labs. These are places that they need and require research to potentialize their capacities as an academy. And this is important to create this transdisciplinarity in knowledge, and also the main barriers, as I mentioned before, and precisely in Colombia, these are the systems for academic value that they don't award interdisciplinary experiences. And many professors are not formed or trained for go cross borders. And the third is the lack of financing that is flexible. It's difficult to get resources for projects. So the topic of innovation, we have to rethink it globally. And so all this social innovation can make a change as far as culture and also in the research that is transdisciplinary.
Pues aquí presento
Well,
algunas
here
cifras en el
we
tema
present some
de la
numbers as far
acreditación de
as
programas en temas de calidad
the
y
lack of
pertinencia, ¿cierto? Y es un desafío
graduates, and
significativo en
it's
la
a
calidad de los programas de
significant
posgrado
challenge
en
in the
comparación con
quality of
programas
post-degree
internacionales.
in
La referencia de muchos
compared to
profesionales de
international,
programas virtuales extranjeros que
for
ofrecen
virtual
títulos de
programs
mayor tiempo y con
that
mayor flexibilidad. Pero en Colombia
they get
estamos
the titles
atravesando
with
por un
less time and
escenario
more
en el que le
flexibility. In
estamos
Colombia, we're
apostando
going through
mucho a
this.
la
We're
calidad
betting
y
a lot in the
pertinencia académica,
quality of the
acreditando
academy
programas de posgrado,
to have
pero
better
realmente se abre un
post-degree
abanico de
programs,
opciones
but
de
we've
diferentes
opened a wide
instituciones que
range of
hoy
options of
están
different
brindando
institutions that are
programas
giving
virtuales,
virtual
¿cierto? A
programs
menos tiempo, y no voy a
with less
decir que
time,
con
and I'm
menor
not going to
contenido
say
en
with
calidad, pero
less quality, but
realmente
in
hay
reality,
una discusión
that's where
aquí en
there's a
Colombia
discussion
en
here
qué
in Colombia
tanta calidad
in
académica y
how much
pertinencia se está
quality and
evaluando
pertinence in we're
al
getting
poder repensarnos y
to
abrir estos
rethink and to
espacios
open these spaces,
culturales,
cultural spaces,
interculturales,
quote unquote,
¿cierto?
intercultural,
Pero
yeah. But
realmente aquí
really,
estamos apostando por un
here
tema de
we're betting
calidad y
on
pertinencia y no
topics of
sabemos
quality and
realmente si la
pertinence, and we
calidad y
don't know in
pertinencia se está
reality the
abordando
quality
en
and
esas
pertinence
instituciones. Entonces aquí
that they
estamos
are
todavía
giving
como
to these institutions.
en
So
ese
we're still in
repensar
this
de
rethinking
qué
of
tanto
how much
estas instituciones que
these
están llegando
institutions that
algo
are
totalmente virtual,
arriving to
¿cierto?
become
Que hay
totally
veces que ni
virtual,
siquiera se le
that
pueden homologar
sometimes
y que ni siquiera llegan a los
they cannot
niveles
be
de formación
equal
académica
or
de nosotros. Hay
homogeneous,
veces que
and they
dicen que
don't
eso es
arrive
un
to the
máster
levels
que
of
representa
academy.
hacer una
Sometimes
especialización para nosotros
they say
y a
that is
nivel
for
de
us is
matriculación no llegan ni siquiera a
specialization
un nivel
as far as
teórico.
matter.
Y
They
eso
don't get
son
the
discusiones
enough credits, and
académicas
these
que
are
tenemos que
academic
dar,
discussions that
¿cierto?
we need to give
Precisamente en países latinoamericanos,
precisely
en donde yo
in
creo que
Latin
podemos
American countries that I
ampliar
believe that we can broaden
todo el
the
tema
all the
o
topic
una
of an
oferta compartida, pero
offer, a
una
shared
oferta
offer,
compartida
of a
homologable
shared offer
en temas
that is homogeneous in topics of levels of promotion equally and in the number of credits, and to demand quality and pertinence that we need to adjust this for Latin America. And as a support to transnational collaboration of the objective of research, transdisciplinary, we need diversity of thought, and few things give it as an international collaboration. When we look for researchers of different cultures and forming and contexts, we're not only combining ideas or questioning our own ideas. This is essential to generate innovative solutions, and also for the problems that we are giving, migration, mental health. They're not exclusive for a country. To work together allows us to find patterns, to share learnings and scale solutions faster. And here it is, where in one of the lines that we were able to investigate in innovation and forming in post-degree indicates that it's a considerable margin to innovate in modalities of teaching. That even though 87% of our programs are present, today diversified to virtual and back it up with a technology like AI, like adaptive learning, it would allow the university to offer better flexibility, personalization, and adapt a better environment for education and to meet the rapid evolution of the students. And here we can go and broaden these technologies so we can get to this culturality, to be able to have students from other countries to share, for example, and to see shared courses of classes, and we did it in different opportunities. But I believe that this is the moment where the world opens up to a different scenario in all the topic of AI. And this is why, to tackle other things that we could do research and see is and the access to the post degrees, and to develop programs that recognize and back up the diversity of the students in as far as culture, ethnia, and gender. And this includes the creation of policies that promote the inclusion and equal access to the post-degree education. And obviously, in Colombia, the lack of public policies that are effective and coordinate to support the formation of post-degree and the research limits the growth of the sector. In reality, we've seen very little the support as far as the training, human talents, level of PhD, and there are very few scholarships for this. And in reality, what we need to implement are policies to augment the launching and scholarships for programs precisely for research given to the programs of post-degree. That is a significant part of the education. Well, this is like our QR code where we did all this research, and you can scan it with everything that we could do research as far as Colombia. And well, this is the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting.
Muchas gracias. Fue muy interesante.
Next, we will have Adenilson Simão give the presentation from Brazil.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Buenas tardes. Yo podría
Good
intentar
afternoon.
hablar en español, pero
I'm going to try to speak Spanish, but I remember that my presentation is in English. My English is not so good, but my Spanish is worse. So I'm going to do it.
I'm going to switch to English now. Well, first, I'll try to
You
do
can speak in English and they can use the translation tool.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, so everyone at the bottom of your screen, if you click the dots where more, it'll give you the translation option, and you can pick Spanish for those who are speaking in English.
Okay, that's great. Well, I would like to do a very short presentation here. I'm not going to share the slides. I'm going to share only this picture here. So from that, you can I guess it will be recorded, and later on you can just go to that link here and get a lot of information about my university. What I'm trying to tell you, to discuss with you today is that the importance of this kind of discussion, this kind of initiative, and and also to congratulate for the choice of for this year's meeting. That is something that everyone that is involved with education should be concerned. And, right now is the impact and what the AI will bring to the table when you talk about educating people in all levels, from the beginning to the postgrad. And so this is a very exciting topic. But talking about the previous topic that was exciting as well, we have the idea of what is interdisciplinary problems, or interdisciplinary research, or interdisciplinary education. And the question is, why should we care about that? And I think one thing that is clear to me is that we are advancing very, very fast in many fields, and somehow we are exhausting what can be learned and what can be done and what can be understood on those isolated fields. So, for instance, if you take, I don't know, physics that has many advanced throughout the decades, but nowadays to provide the next breakthrough on physics, they have to produce a collider that is bigger than Earth. So we're not going to do so. We're not be able to do so. So we have to start combining the physics with biology and with philosophy or something like that. And trying to do this kind of research is primary goal for everyone. And I think this applies to every field. We have used it to be isolated in our own field and to be comfortable on that. And so we specialize on that. But I think that we are in an age where this is not the way to do things anymore. And we have to be able to, first, for us, that is, are in the positions of, somehow leading the universities or the organizations that we are responsible for. And we have to discuss that to analyze what is the force, what is the driving force for this isolation, and try to fight against that. But we also have to foster that on the students. Well, I can talk about my own experience here. In Brazil, we are University of São Paulo. The University of São Paulo is the biggest university in Brazil. It's a public university. And it's very, very difficult for us to get people for our own university. I'm not talking about a university from another country or from another university in my country. I'm talking about the university, my own colleagues in my own universities. It's very difficult to get them to collaborate and to work together. Why? Because the structure of the university was not prepared for doing so. One philosophical point that I think we have discussing so far is that, for instance, I'm not sure that it applies to everyone everywhere, but I'm pretty much sure that is the case. We say that it's important to collaborate and to work together, but when we expect a PhD student to do a viva, to go to defense to get his degree or her degree, we expect him to do it alone. And alone, I mean that even though it worked in a group, somehow he has to individualize what has been done and to pretend somehow that he has a single individual contribution. We are not prepared to accept that maybe his contribution only makes sense in a group, and we should give the group a PhD degree. And this is not, well, I know that it sounds like no sense, but this is the problem that we are facing, actually. We are asking them, asking for collaborating, for working in between areas, but we are in a system where this is not okay. that is not, we are not really prepared for doing so. Well, but I guess university throughout the centuries, I would say, was the place where this kind of discussion was always going on, and eventually we may find a solution or at least some way of doing so. Anyway, I think we are in the edge of some change. Repeating myself what I started saying, I think one guy that is very, very good in combining things and taking things from different sources and combining things and proposing overall view, sometimes wrong, but overall view of many things is AI. Is what this is what make. I am from computer science myself. I have studied artificial intelligence when I was an undergrad, like almost 25 years ago, and we studied artificial intelligence from that time. But what was the game changing was the capacity that the new models have to combine things. While we were trying to solve individual problems, even in our own fields, trying to, I don't know, to do a better doctor, doing a better, I don't know, a better reviewer, a better grammar reviewer, something like that. We advanced. Well, there is a lot of advanced AI, and was not something that happened only in the last 2 years or 3 years. But the advancement was slow. What is kind of new, and this is a completely game change, was the capacity of combining things. So, for instance, I recall talking to a colleague that is specifically from this area, like, I don't know, 5 years ago. We are trying to prepare a special kind of boat for doing a specific task. And I asked him, should I use a text from English or Portuguese for doing this kind of training? Which is better? He said, use both. We don't know exactly why, but when you use both, the result is better in either. So if you use text from English and Portuguese to train something, the resulting is better in English and it's better in Portuguese. And this is a philosophical point. It means that mixing things, mixing strategies, mixing methods is maybe the way we should go. We should try to go. But again, we have many challenges to do so. This is something about the interdisciplinary topic, but also from transnational topic that is we also have discussed last year in the beautiful city of Guadalajara. We have also discussed the need for collaborating between countries, and this I think is something that we do believe that. In this case, I think the idea is that when you take people from different backgrounds, somehow you are mixing backgrounds, you are mixing culture, you are mixing point of views, you are mixing some basic knowledges, and this has the opportunity to bring new ideas, better ideas to everyone. A couple of years ago, I attended a meeting, and there was a very interesting data that was presented there. And initially, I was skeptical, but then I checked the data myself, as I was from computer science, as I said, and it was there. Actually, it is indeed the case. What we did actually, we take our collaboration, or our papers, the papers that we published with our researchers here, and then we have, I don't know, such a level of impact when you take a bibliometrical index, you take some impact. When we take the Brazilian researchers with researchers from other countries, especially those that has some students involved, the publication has a higher impact. Okay, it may be, well, we are in Latin America and we have, unfortunately, we have this kind of a mindset. Maybe it's because the other guy is bringing us up. It's just taking us from our level to the better level. But the data also presented what was the level of publication on the other side. And this is also lower than the joint publication. And so what was clear at that moment, and I have checked that in every time it confirms, is that joint publications that cross nationalities, cross institutions, cross disciplines, they usually have higher impact. So both sides improves, both sides in the end are better off. And this, I think, is kind of, I don't know, a kind of magic. I don't have an explanation for that, but this is something that we have seen many, many times. So here in the University of São Paulo, we do believe that this kind of collaboration is important. On this link that I'm providing here, you can find a lot of information that we have here on the opportunities to come. One thing that specifically to come, but we also have some opportunities to send people abroad and to do this mix, this moving of bodies and knowledge from to and from Brazil, right? And we do believe that this is important. Specifically for Latin America, the Brazilian government launched last year, if I'm not mistaken, an initiative that could provide some scholarships, some becas, scholarships for students from Latin America to come to some university in Brazil. So they could stay here for a couple of months, and they should have some kind of advisor here in Brazil, and they could stay here. It was like, I don't know, thousands of students were approved in this initiative from Brazil. Unfortunately, one problem that we have, I don't know, I guess in many Latin American countries, well, nowadays in countries all over the world, is that sometimes you have a good initiative that is not continued in the next term, next government. In fact, unfortunately, we're not sure what's going to happen to this particular one, but we are very, very, very happy to have it. Well, I also can tell you, I guess, my last words here, and when we talk, we take all the students in postgrad in Brazil, in São Paulo, University of São Paulo, we have more or less 25,000 students. We have a lot of Peruvians and Colombians, and then we have from Angola, and then we have something from Chile, but very few from Mexico. And this is the overall distribution that we have. We have, I don't know, I guess if we take the Portuguese speaking and the Spanish speakers, we are the great majority that we are the students here. And we have a lot of Spanish speakers already around here. Okay? Anyway, so just to sum up, we believe that we have, it's our obligation from the university as a leading institution for knowledge and bringing new knowledge. We have to do our best to break those barriers that don't allow us to do collaboration between fields. I don't think we can survive for long if we don't do that. And we also have to foster, as far as possible, this movement of barriers and knowledge. Even though we can do like we are doing now, that is a virtual meeting. It will be very, very difficult for Matt to organize such a meeting without the possibility to do it virtual. But for sure, it's a percentage of how good it would be to be together and to be discussing this lively in a nice place, or in some of the universities of the people that are involved here. So I think it's something that we have also to consider. Okay, so thank you very much. I give the word back to Jen.
Thank you, Edenilso. Go ahead, Janet.
I was just going to say thank you and turn it over to Matt. So take it away, Matt.
Thanks, Janet. So we're going to do some really quick breakouts. We're going to do basically a little over 10 minutes breakout groups. Room 4 is Spanish language only. Room 5 is also Spanish language. The other 3 are English language groups. And I'm going to break you into those groups now. The topic is transdisciplinary and transnational research to support student success. And I think the main question we're looking for folks to discuss is, how does transdisciplinary research preparation figure into the education of graduate students at your institution? So I'm going to open up the rooms now, and we will reconvene in about 15 minutes, or about 10 minutes.